There is fire on the mountain. A former President John Dramani Mahama needs to run. Aha, Odeneho TV. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, your comment section. You so click on the notification button for more news updates. Na yɛn nim sɛ yɛ easy ɛna yɛ penny power edu brebi say ya ɔno ɛna yɛ bibi ɔyɛ calculations ne ɔpɛ polling stations agodo ballot papers a yɛ kɔ akɔto yɛ no na yɛ de yɛ kukumuti kɔ akɔtim so ato aba no ɔno na yɛ sa nneɛma wei nyina na Afari Gyan ɛnso ɛyɛ nipa bi a ɔyɛ penny power ɛwɔ man Ghana ma sɛ obesie se me puli me special key ba from na me yesi ya na chese won se Afari Gyan e wo ho na we nam so amasisi a woni eye isi na na je mensa edo montuma aba no se isisi a omo pese omo yi eye former president John Dramani Mahama edin efri eye pipa ne so anase efri ballot pipa ne so na omo hu se former president John Dramani Mahama enye nipa nyame ya aduma 7th of December ye to aba ma na se Ghana for pe awo pe na mo to aba ma no ye president obeye president a omo ni gidie bia woni mu so betimi aba be president entisi Afari Gyan ene EC current EC na na j0in mensa ado mo to ma agba no se on person mi former president John Dramani Mahama edi free ballot paper no so before answer na 7th of December aba enti akwa ye nse bebre enti no men person me se obra no adaje no yen hye reasons nti Afari Gyan ene na j0in mensa person we former president John Dramani Mahama edin a free ballot paper so before that make sure to subscribe like comment your comment section you so click on the notification button for more news updates yen chen you could see my sister medasi
parties and candidates and then the electoral commission in a ranking order of importance for the three main actors in a democratic election. I think the justification for this ranking is rather straightforward. There can be no election at all if there are no candidates. And an election cannot be said to be democratic if there are no voters to decide the winner. For this reason, the primacy of the voter and the attendant sanctity of the duly cast vote are regarded as central pillars of the principles of electoral justice. The ranking also underscores the need for political parties to be closely involved in the electoral process. In this regard, I think that the Electoral Commission must view the Inter-Party Advisory Committee, IPAC, as a convenient forum for discussing changes to our electoral practices, irrespective of whether the intended change originates from the Commission or the parties. The reason is that it is not good practice to foist changes in electoral practices on important stakeholders like political parties. It is prudent to discuss any intended changes thoroughly at IPAC meetings with a view to achieving consensus. If consensus is achieved, the IPAC then becomes a convenient vehicle for disseminating the changes to the electorate. Let me say that during discussions at the IPAC, the Electoral Commission is not bound to accept the position even if it is supported by all the political parties. It's not a voting matter. How many parties do we have? On the books, maybe about 19. How many commissioners are there? Assuming that all of them go to IPAC. 7. If all of them, then it will be 19 to 7. No, it is not that kind of matter. And the reason why they are not bound to accept some decision, even if all the political parties support it, is that the political parties can take a stand which constitutes an obstacle to the realization of the electoral rights of the people. When that happens, it is the duty of the Electoral Commission to uphold and protect the rights and interests of the people. I'd like to give a very simple example. The political parties once wanted the Electoral Commission to make it mandatory for people to produce their voter ID cards on election day before they are allowed to vote. The Electoral Commission said no to this no card, no vote campaign, explaining that it is the Constitution and not the card that creates the right to vote. The card makes it easy to identify you as a registered voter. So, on election day, if your name is on the register, which is the legal requirement, but you don't have from voter registration through voting operations to the collation of votes and the declaration of results. In doing so, it must pay particular attention to points where the election process is vulnerable to adulteration. I'm sure that the Electoral Commission is aware that most of the election controversies in recent times have centered on the counting and collation of votes. For this reason, I consider the setting up of regional collation centers in our presidential election to be a retrogressive step, because it increases the number of points at which results can be manipulated. I understand that we borrowed the practice from Nigeria. Surprisingly, at a time when Nigeria was seeking ways to send results straight from the polling stations to one location. It is to be noted that Parliament approved the practice. The second requirement for achieving free and fair elections is a favorable external environment. In this regard, I have said many times that an electoral commission can make the best preparations possible for an election. But if the external environment is not right, the prospect for a free and fair election can be likened to washing a piece of white cloth in murky water and hoping that it will not be stained. Unfortunately, several aspects of our elections are unacceptable because of murky factors in the external environment. And I want to call attention to 4 of them. First, violence. Some people say that violence in our election did not start yesterday. No. But instead of decreasing over the years, it appears to be increasing in both numbers and intensity. If our 2 major political parties are to be believed, they no longer have militias. If they are to be believed. But what is even more worrying is the allegation